This is the Ingraham Angle. We start with a big Fox News alert. Moments ago, we learned a drone strike killed an ISIS-K planner who was believed to be carrying out future attacks, according to the Pentagon. Also tonight, the State Department once again warning Americans at the Kabul airport to leave immediately. The gates are closed. For the latest, we go live to the Pentagon, where Fox's Lucas Tomlinson is standing by. Lucas.
Well, less than 48 hours after that deadly suicide attack that killed 13 American service members and wounded 20 others and killed over 160 Afghans, the U.S. military has struck back, launching a drone strike in eastern Afghanistan's Nangarhar province. That's the headquarters of the ISIS in Khorasan group, which has carried out those deadly attacks against those Americans. Pete, in a statement from U.S. Central Command, Captain William Urban said in a statement, quote, "Initial indications are that we killed the target. We know of no civilian casualties." Now, if you remember, President Biden just a few days ago said he will hunt down and kill whoever's responsible for this attack. It was not clear when that would take place. The U.S. military has been busy preparing to leave the country in the next 2 or 3 days. But breaking news here at the Pentagon, the U.S. military has struck back and killed an ISIS planner. I'm told he was traveling in a vehicle and also killed was an associate with him. Again, an American drone strike has killed an ISIS planner who's responsible for carrying out potentially future attacks against the U.S. military. Not necessarily, I'm told, Pete, was he involved in that attack that killed 13 American service members.
Yeah,
Pete?
Lucas, that was my next question. Do we believe he was the leader or a leader of ISIS-K, and we don't know yet if it's directly connected to what happened at the airport?
That's right, Pete. My sources tell me that this was an ISIS-K planner. This is the ISIS branch in Afghanistan, of course, a splinter group from the ISIS group in the Middle East, and that he was planning additional attacks, not necessarily the attack outside the Kabul airport that killed 13 American service members. This was a planner, not necessarily even a leader. You'll notice the statement from U.S. Central Command. It doesn't say the ISIS-K leader. It says ISIS-K planner. Pete.
Got it. Those words do matter in this moment. But nonetheless, we're starting to hunt them down and make them pay, as the president promised just yesterday. Real quick, I also saw the phrase over the horizon. Do we know whether this drone strike came from the Kabul airport, if it emanated from somewhere else? Do we have any information on that?
We do, Pete. Well, of course, there's no drones right now at the Kabul airport. These drones fly from the Middle East, from Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. It's about an 8-hour flight into Afghanistan. Of course, you have to fly over that air corridor in Pakistan and loiter overhead for, you'd only have about 4 or 5 hours overhead. That is where this drone strike took place. It was launched from the Middle East, flew over Afghanistan. The only air assets that are actually at the Kabul airport are Apache gunships, which I know you're very familiar with.
Yes. But could be an indication of the type of over-the-horizon capacity necessary once troops leave on the 31st. Real quick, any news as well, Lucas, on intelligence, where we may have gotten this information from?
It's just not clear right now at this time. But of course, the U.S. military, keeps a range of assets in the air, not just drones, but other aircraft that can, snoop on communications, mobile phones, all kinds of things. I'll just leave it there. And so it's not without thinking, after a devastating attack like we saw yesterday in Kabul, the U.S. military was clearly scrambling all its assets and to just find out who is responsible and also who might be responsible for other attacks. In your alert at the top of the show, the State Department put out another warning telling Americans, if there are any Americans outside the gates of the airport in Kabul, to exit immediately, to leave the area immediately. So it's very clear that the U.S. military and the State Department do not want crowds outside the gates, and let alone Americans, because of the threat warning. And General McKenzie, the head of U.S. Central Command, Pete, warned that future attacks were likely and potentially imminent. So perhaps this drone strike took out a leader who is planning a future attack in the next coming days. We still have 5,000 U.S. troops on the ramp at the Kabul airport, Pete.
These are initial reports, and so we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and speculate. At the same time, it wouldn't be inconceivable that intel of this type could actually come from Taliban sources as well. I mean, do we know yet how linked or unlinked these groups are? I think a lot of people, Lucas, were jarred by the idea that the Taliban was willing to let ISIS-K fighters out of those prisons at Bagram Air Base, calling into question, are these just the same people with different flags? Do we know how intel might be flowing on this?
We don't know, but you struck on something very important, Pete, and that's, earlier today, our own Jennifer Griffin asked Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby just how many of these ISIS fighters were sprung from prisons around Afghanistan when the Taliban took over. John Kirby said, quote, thousands. Now, you mentioned ISIS and the Taliban have not always gone along. In fact, they've actually fought against one another. And for years, the Joint Special Operations Command, particularly the Ranger Regiment, were launching raids in eastern Afghanistan, in Nangarhar, where the ISIS branch in Afghanistan is based. And so, in fact, in recent years, because of the ISIS fighting the Taliban, they were almost the de facto alliance. The U.S. was launching drone strikes, a tacit almost alliance with the Taliban, a common enemy. But you cannot rule out, certainly, that suicide attack yesterday that killed 13 American service members. You cannot rule out Taliban involvement.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.